some of what you're seeing in the research is growing anxiety with kids and things like that. But let me, as I've spoken to Mom to Mom, let me kind of review a little bit where we've been. I think we talked a little bit about a video called Merchants of Cool with the, what is that on? Sorry. Merchants of Cool, which is a PBS documentary in Frontline, which was done around 2001, that looked at the issue of corporate spying on kids, where they'd actually send spies into the youth culture to try to figure out how to sell things to kids. If you know, the reality is the kids are the #1 spenders. Teenagers are the #1 spenders, and so there's an economic reason as to why folks want to sell them things and keep them kind of invested in their product. So the Merchants of Cool was a documentary done by TBS Frontline, so that was 2001. And then Frontline came out with another documentary called The Persuaders, which looked at, again, not necessarily selling kids things, but how do folks market to adults. And, you know, even how do they get things passed? So they have focus groups, and it's like when George W. Bush wanted to pass the estate tax, well, he called it the death tax, you know, and so by changing that one word, he got it passed. Now, I'm not trying to make a political point here. What I'm saying is that folks, psychologists who are looking at how do we get this passed, figured out how do we persuade people that this is something that we should get passed through. And by changing that one word from estate tax to death tax, and so if you watch this, you'll see how folks study us and how they begin to think, how can we persuade people in subtle ways? And so that's an incredible documentary, but that was 2004. And then they came out with a documentary, again, Frontline, PBS, called The Digital Nation, which starts looking at how is technology beginning to impact our world. And so that was Digital Nation, and that was 2010. And now the latest documentary that's come out is called Screenagers. I know Julie said she saw it, which is kind of coming up with some of the new research, and as technology has kind of screamed ahead. So now it's not that you're just worried about the internet. It used to be you worried about the internet, so you place your computer in a public place and you put all these kind of controls on it to try to keep kids from going to sites that they shouldn't be on. But then when the smartphone, the iPhone came out, all of a sudden, and you get your kid a smartphone, you put the internet in their pocket. And so as hard as you try to, keep them from going places, you just have no idea necessarily where they're going. And so kids are driving in the bus and they're viewing pornography on the way to school. You put the internet in their pocket. And now with the social media thing, they have this FOMO, fear of missing out. And so there's so I've even read some articles where kids actually shower with their phones because they're so afraid. They put it in a little Ziploc bag, but they're so afraid of missing out. Because if you don't reply right away, you might miss out. So here is, if you look at this was a recent article in Computer World, 2015. Social networking is engineered to be as habit-forming as crack. So they purposely engineer because they want to maintain users. They want to hang on to users. Some of these folks, they sell stuff, so Facebook, advertising, Facebook stock, I think yesterday was $132 per share, which it was pretty significant since it started like in the 20s, just a couple of years ago. So it's $132 a share right now. So they have a vested interest in trying to maintain usership, as does all these media things. So Facebook also owns Instagram. So Snapchat would be another thing. So kids probably are not as Facebook heavy users as it used to be. That's waning. They're probably more Snapchat or Instagram than before. Instagram supposedly disappears after 10 seconds, but kids can take screenshots of what you post if it comes to them. And so when it comes to sexting, one of the pressures that you'll see, there's an article back there about girls and social media and sexuality. There's this pressure from guys to send nudes, send nudes, send nudes. And so if they do, on Instagram thinking, on Snapchat thinking it's going to disappear, kid takes a screenshot and starts sharing it with all his buddies, and then the girl is devastated. So some of it, yeah.
There's also such a thing as revenge porn. So they can take these photos and actually sell them to pornography sites. And now your daughter is now not only being harassed by the locker room, she's also being harassed by strangers and various places doing. So that's another thing to think about as well.
The hard thing that the kids don't realize is they think with Snapchat that once it disappears, it disappears. But whatever you post online is online forever. And it never goes away. I mean, it may disappear from your site, but it never disappears fully. There's always a digital footprint. There's always a digital track. And so it's just, we need to be aware of what's happening out there. And I think, in some ways we're unaware, but you can see in these quotes, in these articles, there's a growing concern about how social media is impacting young people. And in fact, there's a headline where there's a mental health crisis among children as selfie culture sees cases of anxiety rise by 42% in the last 5 years. I mean, that's pretty significant. Some of that is they don't realize that in the social media world, the Facebook generation, it's almost like photoshopping. What people put on their Facebook pages is not necessarily reality. It's scrubbed, it's sanitized. We want to present ourselves in a more positive light, and so we only put the good stuff for the most part. Most people only put the good stuff. So when a kid compares themselves to, when they see that, it's like, my life really stinks. It really, compared to so-and-so. And so there's this spiraling down as folks, heavy users especially, are more prone to anxiety and depression. And it's growing. And that's why there's a huge concern among folks, and even Emerson Hospital, I didn't realize that's where those studies come from. On your page here, I did present you with some resources, and in the first site, Common Sense Media. I would encourage all of you to sign up for that, because you can kind of keep abreast at what's happening. The other page that would probably be good to earmark is the first one, cpyu.org, which is Center for Parent and Youth Understanding. And it's just a clearinghouse, and more Christian, where Common Sense Media is more general. It's not necessarily Christian, but this one will be, Center for Parent and Youth Understanding will be direct, thinking from a Christian basis. So there's a bunch of resources there that I would just encourage you to kind of make, bookmark and check in regularly, just because we have to understand what's going on around us.
The first quote that was on the previous slide about the social networking is engineered to be as habit-forming as crack cocaine. With crack, there's never a hit like the first one. Is that, what's your, I have a very low internet profile, so I'm not on any of the social media things, but can you elaborate a little bit on that from what you know and what you see with kids?
It's designed, we'll get to that, but it's designed to, when you hear that tone go off, when you've gotten a text, when you've gotten a Snapchat, like my wife's ringtone for text is like this, herald, you know, and you hear it, and it's like, oh, I got a text. And for kids, when they get something like that, what it does is it creates a dopamine. And it's like, oh man, somebody's liking something or somebody's responding to me, and so it creates dopamine, which begins to rewire the brain, and so it becomes, you know, they're comparing it to alcohol and crack addiction. So a lot of the research is looking at social media as kind of rewiring kids' brains, and some, if we don't figure out how to help them navigate this well, can become addicted. So there was I don't have this, but they asked a college student, and he admitted that he can't go 10 minutes without looking at his phone to see if somebody's texted him or somebody's replied to something, or, you know. And so if you asked a young person, could you go a day without your phone? It would probably be really difficult for them to even consider that, because they are so kind of connected to the media, wanting to know what everybody else in it says, fear of missing out. It's just, you know, and so if you put a Snapchat out there and you don't get as many likes as you think you should, you know, or then you're like, what happened to people, you know, and heaven forbid if somebody unfriends you. For a young person, that's devastating. You know, even though they may not really be a friend, but the thought of somebody unfriending you it just creates this spiral. So there's a sense, as you look at the research, that there's a growing sense of narcissism. So on the resource sheet, the bottom and the videos, there's a video called Millennials and Social Media. I would encourage you, it's about 18 minutes long, I would encourage you to look at it. I mean, I was tempted to just make that the basis of my talk, because I think it's an important video to understand. But there's growing narcissism, and in some ways that's not the kid's fault. I mean, it's a cultural thing where we as parents have always said, you can be anything you want to be, you know. And if kids, we feel like our kids should be in AP classes or the honors class. I mean, sometimes as parents, we will fight to get our kid in there, even though they may not really be honors ready. But we go to bat for them, and we get them in that class, and sometimes parents, teachers will even get a kid an A in class because they don't want to deal with the parents coming out. So sometimes teachers kind of like, okay, he really deserves a B, but I just don't want to deal with his parents, so A minus A, whatever. I just don't want to deal with the parent. And then the other part of it is that we give trophies and awards for participation. You know, and so even if a kid goes 0-13 in their soccer thing, they still get a trophy. And the hard part is when they move into the working world. The working world, the GE is not going to give them a trophy for participation. You don't produce, you know. And so it's trying to figure out how to navigate this well. So that would be a great video for you to use. And he does talk about how the dopamine, how that you know, and it's like giving a kid, it's like basically saying in there, he says, it's like giving an 11-year-old kid saying, here's the alcohol cabinet, help yourself. You know, and so we need to think about when do we give kids technology, what kind of technology do we give, how do we help them navigate that, and so it's really, for us, is we need to evaluate some of that. So many researchers have noticed that narcissism is increasing. There's this lack of empathy because in your social media world, it's all about you. It's all about how many likes you get when you post somebody or post a picture. I took a group of kids to the beach this fall up at Wingersheek, and as I was walking into the water with a group of kids, I noticed these two girls were there, and they were taking picture after picture after picture of themselves. They probably took like 300 pictures, posing and doing all these things because they wanted to get that perfect picture to post on their site. Again, it's like this Photoshop image. I mean, when you see that picture, we don't realize they took 300, 400 pictures to get that one shot. And I'm like, oh, she's so lovely, whatever, you know, and oh, he looks so hot, or so, you know, whatever people would say on their thing. But they live for that. And if if they don't get that, then again, it begins to spiral down. And so it creates this kind of this, I'm the center of the universe kind of thing. And again, when you get out in the rest of the world, the working world, they realize, they come to, you're not.
Well, don't you think that, I mean, teenagers have always looked for some form of validation, whether it's, back in the 80s, it was, who's the most popular? I've got to be the most popular. And I think that, certainly social media trips into that. But at the same time, shouldn't a way to combat that would be to validate that child at home? So if you're a parent that's working, or two parents that are working in a two-parent household, it might be really hard to validate your child's presence, validate who they are at home, and maybe there's certain ways where you can try to do that. Even that validation of the family, I think, even if you're eating pizza, even if you're eating handfuls of popcorn around the dinner table, as long as you're around the dinner table talking to each other, I think that with that.
We'll get there. We'll get there. We're jumping ahead, but yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, but to her point, doesn't this replace what would be there before? This is replacement. I know you just said
So some of the
but-
studies are saying we need to do more studies, but this
Yeah.
is what we're seeing. When you see an increase of 42% of folks checking into hospitals
Yeah.
because of anxiety, they're saying, what's the cost? So any injury, being trained in medical field, you look at the mechanism of injury. So what is really kind of behind this? Instead of just treating the symptoms and saying, okay, there's a bunch of people anxious, you got to ask the question, why? When I was studying Christianity, urban culture in Chicago back years ago, we visited Cook County Hospital, and one of those doctors, Dr. Bone Crusher, he was a psychologist, not an orthopedic guy, but he was telling us a story of that in Cook County they had the highest amount of auto fatalities in accidents in the Chicago area. And they just kept slapping Band-Aids on people and throwing them out to meet the world. And then somebody says, why? And they started investigating, and they realized it wasn't just Cook County, it was actually one part of Cook County. So they went and they asked why, and they went and looked. And it wasn't just that one part of Cook County, it was one intersection. So they went in that intersection and realized there was no traffic signage, there's no stoplights, there's nothing to control the flow of traffic, and it's just like a free-for-all. And that's why. Throw up some traffic lights, problem solved. So you have to look at, kind of what is the mechanism of injury. And I think what researchers are finding is that there, even though there's admitting that we need to do more study, that this is significant.
Well, there's also a thing, when you mentioned Emerson Hospital, I kind of question that as well. On the flip side,
Why is
because
that?
Emerson Hospital is in Concord, it's in a.
It's not
pretty
just
much
Emerson,
in
it's
a-
not just Emerson Hospital.
It's not just Emerson,
No.
okay.
It's Common Sense Media, it's,
Because, when you hear about high forms of anxiety in towns like Concord, like Palo Alto.
with a 42%
you're
rise in the
throwing
New York
in there.
Times piece. So, and if you look at the Common Sense research on the back, you'll see all those studies and all the, that they draw from. It's extensive. It's not just Concord. It's
good.
worldwide.
Because I've heard stories of especially Wellesley, where the suicide rate is through the roof, and when you hear of an Eagle Scout taking his own life, there's something that's other than social media. It's a lot of parental
Social-
pressure to succeed.
I think we're going to get there. Hang on. We're going to get to our role as parents. But I think we need to understand the problem and how significant it is. And I'm going to show you a quick clip from work. It's not. Let me get out of this for a second here. And we'll just watch the trailer here. Let me So this is about, what's the one?
Playing games on iPad.
It all started with one question. What new phone to get my daughter? I knew what Tessa wanted, a smartphone. I learned that you spend on average 6.5 hours a day looking at screens. As a doctor, I decided I needed to understand the impact of all this screen time on kids. And as a mom, I needed to know what to do.
The young adolescent brain can oscillate back and forth very, very quickly, but it comes at a cost.
I'm so distracted by my phone, so it's hard to listen to a teacher and actually understand what they're saying.
What's extraordinary about the studies on multitasking is even though you're doing worse and worse on everything you're doing, you feel as though you're doing better and better.
Who is there to catch you at home? Your mom? You can outsmart her easily. No offense. Yeah, Mom, it's a really hard math thing.
The game industry has designed these games to become universes where these kids enter and they don't want to come out to do math. Who wants to do math?
When I tried to stop him from playing the games, he turns into another person.
I gamed until like 1 in the morning, and then I gamed 3 in the morning, and then I gamed until 5 in the morning.
Most of the time, he'd be on the computer. It felt like he was in a different world.
I didn't realize how much my sister cared about me.
The thing that matters is not whether you're a good person, it's how you look.
I took a picture of myself and my brother, and I sent it to him. When I got to school, I would do that everyone else knew.
This is one of the most difficult parenting issues we've ever faced. Internet consumption, video game use is very complicated to parent around.
The mistake that parents often make is that they assert their authority without explaining it in a way that makes sense to their child.
When parents tell me not to do something, I'm like, what would happen if I did? When my parents actually had that deep conversation, it works a lot better.
It's evolution, it's the future, it's too late, I'm addicted. No, it's not too late. The research that shows human resiliency gives me hope.
My friends and I go out to eat. We'll all agree to put our phones in the middle of the table. Whoever checks their phone first has to pay for the meal.
When I study, I turn off the data on my phone, and that way I can't go on the internet and I can't get text messages.
We have to think about everywhere that kids are in the real world and how we can help educate them in those spaces. We can't just say it's on the schools, it's on the parents. We have to do this as a community.
All right, so, you know, if you look at the names that were a part of that study, you'll see that it's broad. It's New York. It's almost every university in the country is studying it. If you watch Digital Nation, you'll see that it's Stanford. It's major universities that are studying this. This is not a local phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon. There are more cell phones in the world than toilets, than indoor plumbing. And you know, partly that statistic can be skewed from the fact that you know, like my family has 4 phones. So some of that will be skewed by the fact that families have multiple phones in their household. But it is something to really, you know, be aware of. Kids are struggling transitioning to college. Now this is just anecdotal, but I would say part of that struggle in transitioning to college is that they often, when they're lonely because they're moving from a place where they're known, high school, to a place where they have to start all over again building relationships, one of the easiest things to do when you're lonely is to shut yourself in your room, open up your smartphone or your computer, and interact on social media. And in essence, slowing down the process of transitioning into college. It slows down the whole process because you've shut the door and you're just interacting by your lonesome in kind of a surfacey way on social media. It slows down that process, and you see that time and time again. College is a huge transition, and I think social media adds a new element to it that is a challenge. So now we transition to, so what can we do? Do we limit or monitor? I mean, some parents, that's kind of the response, is to limit and monitor everything. Some parents are like, okay, they allow the kids to kind of determine what's healthy. And some would, or do we mentor or walk alongside and try to help folks to have a healthy sense of, how to navigate this? And probably, I would say that a ladder is probably the most important thing. And one of the hard things to do is if you're a parent, you have a kid that's on media constantly, it can be a battle at home. And it's like, and sometimes we kind of freak out and kind of come down on kids heavy. It's like, turn that thing off, why can't you engage? And that's probably not the best way to do it. And so we're going to look at some possible ways to do it. But does our role change? Maybe at a younger age we tend to monitor and kind of limit when they're younger and kind of change as things go on. Maybe that's something to do. So the other thing is, do we need to examine our own usage? The average teenager spends about 9 hours or so on screen time. What would you say the average adult spends?
9 hours.
About 9 hours, exactly. So parents of tweens and teens spend more than 9 hours a day on screen time. And 78% of those parents believe they're good media role models. I'm probably not. I mean, I'm guilty of some of this. I love technology. And so I need to navigate this well in terms of, how am I providing an opportunity for me to engage my daughter? Now here's the way it breaks down. You probably can't see it, but the average to the left of all, 3 hours and 17 minutes for adults is watching TV, DVDs, video, where 7 hours and 43 minutes is like personal screen time. I mean, that could be some work stuff, that could be, texting, but we adults consume a lot of the media. And so we need to evaluate our own usage and figure out how do we model this well as we mentor and as we kind of think through what do we do. So what can we do? Foster kind of an awareness of media and self, and where are you getting your identity from? So many kids are getting their identity from what they see posted on Facebook and Instagram and things like that. And if they get likes, one day they feel good about themselves. If they don't, they feel bad about themselves. Or if they're being bullied online, they feel bad about themselves. But their identity is being shaped so often by what they see or how they compare themselves to what's being said in media. And I tell our kids, and my kids can quote it because I've been saying this for years in my work as an outdoor educator, is comparison is straight from the pit of hell. But yet we do that all the time. Oh, she's so pretty, I wish I could be like that. Or, gosh, I wish I could be like the Apostle Paul, he was so brave. And, if we compare ourselves even to the biblical characters, and we think we don't have what it takes, and we forget that even Moses struggled with, I don't think I'm up for the job. We forget that King David wasn't even invited to the dinner party that Samuel came to Jesse's house, and Samuel was still out in the fields. We forget that these folks were overlooked and marginalized in a sense, and didn't see themselves as being the person for the job. And yet God has this way of using nobodies or folks who struggle with their own identity in powerful ways, and we need to remember that. So what is shaping their identity? So we need to help them be aware of media and themselves, and that hopefully that they find their identity in Christ. That's the hope. We need to embrace quality media usage. what are some good, it's not like all media is bad, there's some quality stuff out there, and so we need to evaluate what's quality and how can you do this with balance. I think the key is balance, helping them so they can not always be consumed by it. Selective single tasking, kids multitask. They do their homework with their cell phones beside them, with Spotify playing in the background, or watching, it's happened in my house this week. Corinne is doing her work on her computer. She's down she has to go to some meetings out in Needham, so she's staying with us for the week. But she's doing her work while watching TV at the same time. She keeps telling me that I can do this, it helps me. But the research says it doesn't. The research says it distracts you. The research says that every time you get a distraction, to try to get back into that task is really difficult. So we need to help them to be single tasking instead of thinking that they can multitask with all these media sources. So it's interesting, that girl saying, I need to shut my phone down. We talked about that this weekend with Monadnock, with, when you have your quiet time, you need to put your phone on airplane mode. You need to put your phone on do not disturb. So if you're having time at work, you're not going to be distracted. I know that's tempting for me too. I'll be working on something in my office and I hear my email go off, and then, it's like, oh, shiny, like the Finding Nemo Dory. It's like, ooh, and we're gone. So we need to kind of have that set that time aside. Carving out time and places to disconnect. One of the books I have is 52 Ways to Connect with Kids in the iPhone era. And one of the things he mentions is that his dad bought a hot tub. First, they were going to be given a hot tub, and so they were going to set it up by the neighbors, and they realized the hot tub didn't work. So he went out and bought one. But the great thing about a hot tub, they realized, is you can't take your phones there. And so it's a conducive place to have a conversation. It makes me want to go out and buy a hot tub and just have kids over and just sit under the stars and just, because you can talk. So carving out time and places where you can, you can disconnect, where, it's, you're fostering conversations. I think that face-to-face, we need to give kids practice in having face-to-face times. And nurturing relationships and face-to-face conversations. So it's kind of, again, finding every opportunity that we can have, we can find to have those times. If you're picking your kid up from school, that's the time to have some face-to-face conversation. And probably the question not to start with was, how was your day? Maybe it can be, but sometimes if high schoolers like good, you're going to get one-word answers. So you got to be creative, and the author of the book talks about, his daughter's like, oh, a froyo, I love froyo. And so he just instantly pulls into the parking lot because she likes frozen yogurt. And it's like, I'm not going to miss this opportunity. So he goes in and buys the yogurt, and he sits down, and they have a conversation because they're doing something that's a little different. It could be, carving out time and spaces and places. It could be you schedule breakfast once a week with your kid, and you rotate that. So you're having some, over food, you're having some time and space to have conversations that you wouldn't necessarily have if, you're kind of in the same routine. So you got to think about carving out time and space and model it, There was a study that they were watching 50 adults in a fast food restaurant. 40 of them were on their smartphones. And the ones who were more engaged with their smartphones when their kids were acting up spoke harshly to their kids. So we need to really be engaged and listen to our kids and work to listen to our kids and show that they're valued and cared for, and that relationship is important. I know Lizzie the other day, and I was immersed in a book, and she said, can we play a game? And I was like, no, because I'm reading. And I missed that opportunity. I missed that opportunity, and so, maybe that we need to be more proactive when they ask, is like, drop everything and just do it, because, you never get that back again. And communicate something to your child. And so I really regret that. Again, we need to be role models in this. And so we need to, we can't be plugged in. We can't always have our face in the screen. We can't always be glued to the TV set or whatever. We need to look for the opportunities to engage our kids and show them what it looks like to put things down, what it looks like to kind of disconnect so that we can connect.
This is going to sound maybe negative, but what if they don't want to spend time with you no matter what? I mean, maybe they just don't want to connect with you at all. I mean, there's some of that.
Yeah.
You have to, I mean, maybe you're not fighting media, you're fighting the fact that there's that generation gap or that interest gap, or I know some of it's just totally boring. I did walk out of a movie and everyone was on their smartphone in the hallway, and people watched. And I couldn't believe that they weren't doing anything but getting on their phone for whatever reasons.
Because for 2 hours they've been without it, that's why.
But I'm sure it was for different reasons. Somebody was checking, somebody was doing something, right? And none of it was emergency, necessary, urgent. But again, like we've offered to do things with our kids, and they're in this gap where they just don't want to be. So I think maybe finding like youth groups that do more activities and are understanding of that.
What I would say is don't sell yourself short.
Yeah.
Statistics say that kids predominantly want to be with you. And you just have to think creatively and to try to foster that. And it may be that you have to maybe rework things, but you're still the #1 influence in your kids' lives. And statistically, that's the research. And so we can't forget that we're still the most important influence in a kid's life.
Okay.
And they still deep down want to be with us. Like family vacations and things like that are still really important, and they long for that. They may not tell you, but deep down, statistically, and I can't speak for every kid, but statistically that's the case. They really love being with family. And we can't let that, we can't just say, I'm just not gonna, because I don't think they want to be with me.
No, I know, it's just that, but then there's also boredom. I notice that my kids get on the media more just from boredom. They say I'm bored.
This is again where we need to be creative, and I think we need to find ways. Maybe it's making cookies or around the meal. One of the things I think we need to hold sacred is meal times. We need to create statistically, families that eat regular meal times together, their kids are less likely to use drugs, alcohol, and it impacts the social media usage. And so for folks who have younger kids, this is where you can start now and build that in, is you just have meal times together where there's no tech. You put it all in a charging station or whatever, you just shut it all down, put it on silent, you eat meals together. It statistically is, across the board is one of the most important things family can do for all these, ills that are societal. Meals time together, and that again, conversing, and it really is important.
It gives children a validation that, they may not get anywhere else. They may not get it from the teacher because they're in a classroom full of 20 other kids. They may not get it from their friends because the friends are busy with other friends. So
it gives you a touch point. It gives you time to kind of process a day and to share, when I would pray before meals, I would pray, if Lizzie was going to go to dance class, I'd pray for her dance, that she would dance for Jesus, just be pleasing to Jesus. So we would, whatever was going on, if Karen was away to college, we'd pray for her, but it was a touch point, and that was just before the meal, and then conversation would just come. So it's important. I encourage you during mealtime that's a no tech time, that you really kind of foster that time.
I was thinking about what you said, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Celeste.
Hi, Celeste. So let's say that you're picking up your kid after basketball practice. Okay, like if you're married, I would suggest you tell your spouse this, but you can force the kid to spend time with you if you stop at Papa Gino's on the way home.
And that's
just because you eat together doesn't mean you have to eat together at a dinner table, but you can kind of force it that way. You know what I mean?
What I'm
Without
saying
making
is-
it seem forced, it's like, it's a treat, and ooh, and you're buying?
No, you
Okay,
gotta
I'll go.
understand what I'm saying is, that used to happen spontaneously. My son and I used to look forward to doing those things together. And I'm not saying social media is taking it away. I'm saying they should turn to peer groups. What I'm saying, I think, is peer groups are failing them. And so we see this failure in peer groups. They should naturally be moving away from you. So now we're trying to, and they don't really want to be with us. It's kind of a, they want to go towards their peers. And the peers, I can never get anybody, all the peers want to do is be online with each other. They don't want to be out doing things much.
Again,
Celeste, I think you need to kind of take advantage of opportunities that come up, because, you kind of have to jump at them when they come. Like, my daughter once wanted to see a movie, she's like, I've never seen a movie that ended at midnight. And let me tell you, I didn't want to go out to the movies at 10 o'clock at night and watch a movie that ended at midnight, but I did it, and I'm glad I did it. And, you kind of have to jump at those when you see the opportunities. You think of what they're interested in, you don't do things that you're interested in, you do things that they're interested in.
Well, they're refusing to do anything I'm interested in.
there's no question that media is kind of, one of the statistics that's out is that kids are delaying getting their driver's licenses. They just have no desire to get them, and it's a growing phenomenon. And when you ask the kids, not every kid, mind you, but a lot of kids are delaying getting their driver's license because why do I need it? I can connect with my peeps online. I don't need to drive to their house. So there's this growing phenomenon where young people are just delaying that process of getting their license, which to a parent is like, really, this stinks because I need you to run errands and I need you to pick up your younger sibs but the statistics are showing that kids are just delaying that. They have no desire, no interest to get their license. And it could be from anxiety, it could be, who knows all the reasons, but social media plays into a little bit of that in terms of I can connect online, I don't need to. So meals together are important. And some of the research is showing that kids are not getting enough sleep. And it's connected to, this whole idea of they have in some ways, they have their phones with them at night. So I encourage you, and it may be a battle, you need to think through how, if your kid has their phone and they're a senior, maybe this is not a battle you want to have. But the fact that they have their phones, every time they hear it bing, they wake up because FOMO, there's this fear of missing out, and they've got to respond to something. Again, it used to be, we were very careful about where they watched TV, where they interacted with the internet. When they have a smartphone, they have all of that in their room. And they're streaming Netflix, they're on their social media, they can go wherever. They can search the web, they can do whatever. And half the time, as parents, we're clueless as to what they're doing on their smartphones. So we just need to be aware of, and if you can, the research is saying that if you can have a docking station, a charging station in your room at night, that will actually help the kids sleep. And starting that younger versus later is probably a wise idea. I know, again, Eileen's phone, when she has it, because the kids text late, and she'll fall asleep and all of a sudden do and then she's awake for, and it just disrupts your sleep pattern, and you don't enter back into heavy sleep as readily after that. They even recommend not having TVs. We have a TV in our room. Again, I wrestle with this. This is something I've got to deal with and understand how I can be a better role model myself. So that's one thing they suggest. And again, find creative ways to engage in conversation. We really need to listen. And we really need to listen well. And so some of it is, did I go backwards now? So finding creative places and spaces to have conducive conversations. It could be breakfast out, like I said, or a fire pit or a hot tub. A lot of families have fire pits. Go out there, have a fire. There's something about a fire that just draws, just kind of sucks people in, and that's a creative way to have conversations. And so be thinking about those. Be thinking about maybe even doing trips to places that maybe you know there's probably a lack of connectivity. You know, find those places that you can just be your family and that you can create a family memory. And create traditions, perhaps a No Tech Tuesday or Friday or Thursday, where you can play games or watch a movie together. Starting young, again, for those who have younger kids, doing this now would probably be healthy. And you know, the guy who wrote the book, and I'll set it out for you to see, he talks about that they did it, and he and his family did it, and partly it came out as a result of a mission trip they're going on with the family and the church. The pastor required them to fast from media for 30 days before the mission trip, so they could no social media whatsoever. And the kids whined and complained about it, but they're also, once they detoxed, in a sense, they saw the value of it because increased personal relationships were increasing and a whole bunch of things happened. So they committed to doing a No Tech Day where, as family, they'd sit around the fire, read, play games, whatever. And he's talking about his daughter going to college, and they would Snapchat, it's kind of funny here, they'd Snapchat a picture of them on No Tech Day and send it to the daughter, which is kind of confusing. But, or maybe they sent it later, but the kids in college was like, I so miss that. So miss that time. So they really do long for that connectivity. Kids really do. And they understand that a lot of their friendships are surfacey because of the social media, and they long for that kind of person-to-person thing. But a lot of cases, they really don't have any clue how to go about that. And so we need to model that, and we need to provide opportunity for that. And so, you know, some of it may be when you see a son or daughter playing a video game, ask to play with them. I know that's probably like, for some of you, for me, because I would be killed right off the bat. It may be like somebody sticking stuff under your fingernails. But again, you know, when you show interest in what they're doing, one, you're aware of what's going on. And two, you know, the author of this book is saying you wouldn't believe the conversations that start to come out from that time when you sit down and you begin dialogue. So make it a two-person game. As hard as that might be, just kind of sit down with them and play with them. And if you see them kind of engaging or watching a film, you know, maybe not during the film, because that would probably drive them crazy, but just process it with them. Hey, who is that character? And what did he say? And what do you think about what he said? Do you think he's right when he said that? And you begin to process what they're seeing. Obviously, there's some media you may be watching with them that's like, you know, we should really, I don't know if this is good for us to watch. We need to unplug this. You may need to make some decisions about that. But if you're walking alongside them, it's easier to do that in dialogue and help them, you know, process. How do you think it's measured up with your values, family values? You know, what do you think the message is here? Even that Super Bowl halftime, Lady Gaga. What is the message that kids are going to see when they watch the Super Bowl halftime? We need to have those conversations. I'll probably turn it off when I'm watching it here, just because it's not going to. I don't think it's going to be healthy. Again, I'm limiting that instead of watching it and dialoguing with them. But I mean, there's some things that I think it's okay to kind of turn off. But I think we just need to be really engaged with our kids. Now, I'm going to show you a video that's really provocative. Hopefully it'll work. And
how do you want it to work?
What's that?
You will need to wind down for questions, and then.
What's that?
I think after the video, we'll need to wind down with the questions, and so we have a few
Yeah.
minutes for small group.
Okay.
Because we need to pick up at 11.
Sorry. This is a very provocative video by Moby, and so watch it, and I think it will raise a bunch of questions as you kind of think through, because I think he's he's showing, again, the seedier side of social media, and I've showed it to the kids in the high school youth group, and we've discussed it. And so maybe something, if you have older kids, that you watch it together. It's listed on your thing. So, but just take a look at all the images and what he's kind of commenting on in regards to this. Oops, sorry.
Are you lost in the world like me? If the systems have failed, are you afraid? All the things, all the loss, can you see? Are you lost in the world like me? Like me?
There's a lot there to process. And again, I put the link on your page. It's interesting when I discuss to the kids, and I've seen it probably 4 or 5 times now. One of the things I didn't notice at first was the folks who are in jail. If you look closely, you'll see the little cell phones that so they're kind of trapped in their device, and it's pretty sad.
Well, what's something that's really near to media today, and why likes has become a form of currency. Actors, if you're going into acting, you have to show your agent now how big how many friends you have on Twitter, how much of an audience can you bring with you to the agency before you don't even have to be that talented. You just have your audience, and that's something that's really twisting everything. Is not even looking at a person because they're an artist and they're talented. It has nothing to do with that. It's now how many likes do they have?
Right. And that's
and that's and then you get the money. So many eyeballs can I reach using this particular
particular actor versus that particular actor. And, you know, that's where the monetary and you know, it's all the basement of humanity, essentially.
And there's the thing we don't realize is there's no such thing as reality TV. And even social media isn't real. That some producers deciding that we actually see. And one of them, I think one of the most indicative and interesting pieces in that video is when the girl, she's sad, when she comes in front of the camera, all of a sudden she's happy, sad, happy. And again, that's what Facebook does, is creates this image of my life is perfect, my life is great, and yet they're dying inside. And that's often what's happening. Here's a book, I can leave these out so you can see them. This is 52 Ways to Connect with Your Smartphone Obsessed Kid. And this one, I haven't read this one, but I like the author, Shanti Feldham. She does some great, they have books out that we actually give to new couples now, Eileen and I, for men only and for women only. They're great books for marriage, but this one's for parents only. So she's a researcher, so she'll give you a bunch of statistics in terms of, you know, what does it mean for parents only, kind of. So she'll tell you, you know, give you a bunch of stuff that will help you understand your kids. This one is just a national study on soul searching. This is probably a little old now. By Christian Smith. It's one of the largest national studies on youth and religion ever done in the country. And his feeling is, some of his conclusions are kids have developed, and not just kids, but even adults, have developed a new religion that he calls the moralistic therapeutic deism, where it's good to be good to be moral, and God is our cosmic counselor, and that's really our God. You know, heaven forbid that God have any demands on us. So he's seeing that kids really don't understand what it means to be a follower of Christ, and we created this other religion. This is by Chap Clark. I did put his blog on your resource page. He's a professor out of Fuller Seminary and part of the head of their family and youth studies program. This is Hurt, so he buys into that a lot of the young people, the youth culture is really isolated from the adult culture, and he bases some of it on like David Elkind and Patricia Hirsch, I think is the name, that just says the youth culture has been abandoned, that adult interaction is minimal. So some of their research, like Kara Powell, who works with them, says that really if kids are their faith is going to stick, that instead of one adult for every 7 kids, you need 7